Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bacon, I make plans for 7:45, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. Well, good evening, folks. Hopefully you guys have had yourselves a great weekend. I tell you, if you're out in Ontario and you got hit with that storm, and you know what I'm talking about, we got to see thunder snow for the first time. I don't remember thunder snow. I don't think I've ever seen thunder snow. So quite an event to say the absolute least, but we'll be digging out. I know some of the city folks are still digging out streets. Some streets have not been plowed yet. If yours has, you're lucky. I know it's a little bit colder out west. So there's different weather all across Canada, but needless to say, we're all here. We're hopefully all inside. We're all warm. Maybe we've had our supper already. Our guts are full. Sit back, grab a cold one, grab a drink. And as I said, this will be at least an hour and a half of some incredible education, knowledge, 411 tips, tricks, technique, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be that kind of show. So I'm really excited to get started, and I don't want to waste any time because it is what a show. It's ladies' night, as I mentioned. Of course, our guest host, Yvonne, will be joining us shortly. She has brought with us to our community, our CFN community, a special guest. Her name is Erin Wilson. And the cool thing about Erin, and as I said, if you get a chance, if you, for whatever reason, you have questions after this is all done, because I know I'm probably going to, but she is a wealth of information, and what she's studying currently right now, hopefully she's going to share with us. And one thing that when we talk about catch and release, she's going to talk about keeping the fish wet, something that we also promote as best we can now with the CFN Fish Off, because at the end of the day, the health of fish is very important. We're going to be sharing a video too with John White that he just released it. And I think it's really cool, and it gives folks a perspective of, even though we release the fish, we don't necessarily know what happens to them when they are released. But John shares in a really cool video that we're going to be sharing tonight as well. So stay tuned to that. And then, of course, after that, during that video, anyway, Lawrence and Jay are going to be talking, of course, a little bit about the ladies segment. We'll discuss that and rehash that. But what's going to be awesome is they're going to be joining us in regards to what happened this past weekend. Proud to say we had a very successful 2023 CFN Ice Jam on Canassie Lake in Saskatchewan. Big shout out to Canassie Inn and Cabins for hosting this group. Hopefully they behaved. Hopefully they had lots of fun, but judging by the photo, they did. I don't think anybody went away unhappy, but the cool thing, of course, was that on the weekend, we assisted in the helping of tagging some fish. And I believe that is Kaitlin McCallum that is holding that tagged perch, one of hopefully many. But Caitlin's going to talk to us about what was obtained in terms of the science and how many fish were tagged. But I was just absolutely thrilled to know that CFN was a part of an event like this that got to see fish get tagged and us help with some research. I know those folks over at the Saskatchewan Sportfish Research Group had fun too doing it, but at the end of the day, they're out there working and, of course, doing research, and we can't thank them enough. And, of course, they're going to be joining us later. That is Chris there on the right, Kaitlin, and hopefully Julee, who I don't know if I see her in the lobby. Is she in the lobby? Yes, she is. There she is. Julee's in the lobby. So The three of them are going to be joining Lawrence, Jay, and myself, and we're going to be talking all about what happened on the weekend. So stay tuned to that, but very, very excited to learn more about what happened. Of course, the CFN Winter Fish Fest has concluded. We are now in the the second week of March. Some would say still the first, but it is the second week of March. And some prizes have already been delivered. We're going to be delivering more and giving away more. So make sure you join Mike and I tomorrow for Attorney Tuesday. And it will likely not be the conclusion of the Winter Fish Fest, but it will be the second last show. And of course, can't thank all of these sponsors enough. They've made our job very, very easy to reward our community. And as I said, very proud to be setting some of that stuff out this weekend. Of course, just a couple other announcements. It is going to be the 5th annual CFN retreat at Horwood Lake Lodge, just outside of Timmins in Ontario. August 14th to 19th is the week in which we're going to be going. Please call Doris and Warren, the owners, and book your spot. I know spots are filling up, and with the recent Ottawa show and the Spring Fishing and Boat Show, there was a lot of talk about this event, and of course, our beloved Camp McIntosh, who is going to be hosting us in September 22nd to 24th. Again, both camps right now are about 2/3 full. I might be off by that, and judging by the amount of traffic that came to our booth at both shows, we might even be booked a little bit more. So needless to say, if you want to join us at those two events, Horwood Lake Lodge for our 5th annual CFN retreat, or at Camp McIntosh for our 2nd annual OFC Nation retreat, September 22nd to 24th. As I said, please call Tracy and Andre and book your spot today. As I said, there is so much more that I'd love to discuss, but I have so much that I want to get to, and I don't want to waste any time. But also, the folks over at Muskies Canada wanted me to mention, of course, the Muskie Odyssey is coming up, and thank you to Jamie Sebastian, who sent this over so that I could share this and make you Muskie folks aware that this show that is dedicated for you, for Muskies, only Muskies, there is a great look at the speakers that are going to be coming on board. So again, some great tips, great techniques that are going to be shared, some Muskie 411, Muskie handling, which of course Erin Wilson's going to be talking to us about tonight, and a whole bunch more. And just before we get to Yvonne, I'd like to also wish our beloved Big Jim and his wonderful and beautiful wife, Tammy, on their 40th wedding anniversary. Jim's not going to be with us tonight. He took the night off because he knew how busy of a show it was, and that's just the kind of classy dude he is. He's busy getting ready for a few things. I'm looking forward to spending some time with him on the way down to Tennessee on our journey to the Bassmaster Classic, where he is going to receive the coveted Hall of Fame award. And as I said, we are so proud of him for that, and really looking forward to bringing you folks along. So again, it's an action-packed Monday. We have lots to share. I'm sure there's lots of folks that I need to say hi to. So let's do that real quickly before we get going. Manny's in the house. How you doing? Steve Shaw. Yeah, baby, who is doing a fantastic job with all of our edits and, of course, our inbox. So anybody who does have an edit, do exactly what some of you folks have already done and already know about. Go to the inbox at the Canadian Fishing Network Facebook page. Send them in. Walt or Steve will get to them. Unfortunately, I've been so busy. I haven't kept up or carried my weight, and I apologize to both Walt and Steve. I will do a much better job. Richard's in the house. How you doing, Richard? Klassen's here. Rob Alspatch. Corey's always with us. Nice to see you, Corey. Tony, how you doing? Trisha's in the house. Nice to see you. Walt. Yeah, baby. Thanks so much for putting that on this past weekend, Walt. I'm sure it went off without a hitch, but again, it is a little bit of work. And for all those who attended out in Saskatchewan, Lloyd's in the house. Steven's here. We really appreciate it, because anything that gets us involved with great research and just an all-around feel-good story as tagging fish, it means the world to us. How you doing, Eve? Catherine's in the house. Nice to see you, Catherine. Nick, Jen, I believe it was your birthday just recently, Nick. So happy birthday to you. Luke's in the house. I'm hoping you've picked your boat, Luke. Have you picked it yet? I know you were talking about it at the Ottawa show. I'm hoping you narrowed it down. Mike Howard's with us. Well, listen, say hello to everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And of course, we are going to be talking to Yvonne right after this. It's ladies' night again, and there she is, the one and only Yvonne Brown.
Or like this.
Either way, it works for us, Yvonne. So you have been a busy gal as of late. You had an OWA event that just passed. Was it 2 weekends ago that you girls got together?
Yeah, 2, 3, maybe 3 now.
Three now?
Up in Parry Sound. It was I can't remember how many ladies we had, but yeah, it's a great event. It was tough. It was really cold, but you know what? I can't remember if I ever heard a complaint. Like some people, like our machines, some of our machines wouldn't work. We had both Argos and ATVs to help transport people and equipment out. And it just was too cold for some of the engines to start. I brought mine up. It didn't start until Sunday when the temperatures were better. Wow. But we still had a fantastic time. We have a master angler program, and we had 8 master angler crappie caught that weekend.
No way.
Yeah, it's and a master angler for us is 13 inches or over.
Yeah.
6 of the ladies, it was their first time ever getting their master angler pin, and one lady, Julie Martinez. It's taken her 5 years. She's been trying for 5 years to get a master angler. She got one that weekend, and she was just she was over the moon. It was so, I don't know how to express it, but just to listen to her talk about it and see the pictures and all of that, it was just so inspiring. So, congratulations!
Based on all the pictures, it looked like you gals all caught your master angler fish. There was nothing but smiles. Every time you guys have an event, you can tell you have a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it was funny because reflecting on like the past 10 years and what we've done and everything. It's when we all get together like that, particularly the weekend events, it's less about the fish than it is about us all coming together. And just, I guess maybe just after COVID and us being in person more, I see this more than ever before. So it's something that we enjoy.
Well, I will say this: it's
just so nice to listen to other people's experiences and watch them catch fish and listen to all the the lies and fish stories, because they're starting to get good with the fish stories too.
100%. Well, I mean, they're learning good habits and bad, some maybe, but needless to say, you're right. COVID certainly made us appreciate the time that we can get together a lot more, and it looks like you folks didn't forget
Yeah.
to have a little bit of fun along the way. So that was awesome. And as I said, when it comes to
Yeah.
OWA events, if you are interested in getting involved in I'm sure Yvonne is going to be talking about a few upcoming events and perhaps maybe some links that ladies that are not part of OWA can go to so that you can also join in the fun.
Thanks. Yeah, so speaking of our events, we are still finalizing some of our events. We do have some facilities and dates confirmed. The next one we will likely have is our Steelhead event, which is held in Newcastle. We have we're very grateful to have access to private property. The Wilmot Creek runs through this property, so we do steelheading. It's going to be April 29th and 30th. I'll probably get registration information out this week for people to sign up. We have a booth at the Toronto Sportsman Show coming up. That's March 16th to 19th at the International Centre. So please come by and say hello. We will be at CanCast as well in Peterborough. I think that's April 2nd.
Yep.
Let's see what else. We were talking earlier before we came on the show about research and whatnot. I'm doing a research project at St. Lawrence College, and it is focused on women in angling with a focus on empowerment and wellness. So I will have, as part of the research, a survey to send out. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to send it to you, Scotty. If there's any female anglers that would like to complete it, it would be really appreciated, because it's just the more data, the more information I can put into the research article.
100%.
So look forward to doing that. Muskie Odyssey. We've had a booth in the past. We won't have a booth this year, but we will have a group of ladies going. So I was looking at your speaker schedule. All great speakers, but I'll tell you one thing. If you have a chance, go see Lisa Goudier. She spoke last year. I sat in on a seminar. A phenomenal speaker, a great guide, funny, knowledgeable. And if you're looking for a guide, she's on the Ottawa River. She does an excellent job. And like I said, I think that you'll have a really good time with her. She's a laugh.
Well, we got to see firsthand at the Ottawa show when Lisa was doing her seminar. John Anderson was there as well, but
yes,
Lisa got up there, and I'll have to say, I mean, the crowd when Lisa was talking, and I know Muskie, there's a certain mystique and a certain following, and everybody's enthralled. It's kind of like sharks, right?
Yeah.
You're scared of the water, you're scared to go swimming, but you love sharks. I'm one of those. Muskie's, I think, has the same appeal, but listening to Lisa go over it was amazing. You're 100% right. Her presentation is worth the price of admission alone. But
yes.
You talk about a girl that's got a great sense of humor.
Yeah. She's hilarious.
Nailed it.
Yeah. I love spending time with her.
Yeah.
And lastly, I know Jason is listening. We had I went to the Spring Fishing and Boat Show. I just went as a kind of a tourist, got to walk around, and it was so great to connect with yourself. I haven't seen you in a while, and other people in the industry. And it wasn't a great big space, but I didn't even see the whole show. It was just, I spent most of my time just catching up with people and seeing everyone. And for some reason, that is the kind of like the first show for me of the season, and it kind of recharges my batteries. It's like, okay, let's go, and let's get things going and whatnot. So it was great to see people. I did get a chance to talk to Jason Barnucz, who I know is listening, and we never seem to have enough time. We get caught up, and then we have to go. He was in the Pure Fishing booth, but I just want to put it out there, if I don't get a chance to talk to him tonight, that he and I have to have a day out fishing. He can call it field work if it's a work day or whatever, but I don't think he and I have ever fished together that I can recall. But we bump into each other at events, and I said, okay, we got to have a day, and we got to make it work in 2023. So he can address that later on when he's on the show.
That is awesome. And I'm pretty sure he will be nodding yes, of course. I too, I can't wait to spend a little bit of time with him as well. And you're right, the shows are so busy, and you're trying to spread as much time as you possibly can with everybody. And like you said, it's a reunion that
Mhm.
unfortunately we just don't have enough time to spend with each individual. But you're bang on. We cherish it because unfortunately,
Yeah.
you never know when it's going to disappear, right? What's going to
Yeah.
be the next virus that's going to send us back home and in lockdown and all this other stuff. So you're right, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, Jay has said I'm being called out by Yvonne. Yeah, just to take her fishing, Jay. Nothing else, but you're all good. It's all good.
And I'll come to him. I'll go down to, because I don't know the fishery where
Yeah,
he lives, so
yeah.
I'd be happy to join him, whether it's steelheading or whatever else. And if Trevor wants to come along, that'd be awesome too, because I would love to fish with him too.
So I'm at the show and I'm watching Gord Pizer, and Liam's doing the presentation, and Gord's,
Mhm.
you can see he's taking a back
Mhm.
seat. Lets Liam run, and I see the same gleam in Gord's eyes I do Jay's when it comes to
Yeah.
Trevor. And I actually had Moose at one point announce that Trevor was going to be going on stage because I've been at him. I'm like, dude, you're going to be there one day. You are going to be up there one day
Oh
doing
yeah.
the presentation.
Yeah.
So I got Moose to, now appearing on stage. Trevor Barnucz was but
Oh, good for him.
yeah, no, absolutely great family, and they have lots to teach us and show us
Mhm.
when it comes to fishing. And we just have the luxury of, as I said, spending every Monday with that family, and
Mhm.
we look forward to many, many more. Now, you always seem to find a phenomenal guest, and the nice thing about this, I will say, Erin Wilson, but this guest is the segue that will lead us into what we did this past weekend. And again, for all those who aren't aware, we had a session that was out on Canarsie Lake where we managed to get a bunch of CFNers together, which is not easy to do. As you can see here, they went out on the ice on Canarsie, and of course, cabins and in cabins. They hosted the event, but as you see there by the signs, Saskatchewan Sportfish Research Group joined them, and the whole sole purpose for them joining them was not only to have a good time, but also to start tagging some fish. And I know what Erin is sort of doing out here in Ontario is very similar to what's going on with that group. So as I said, you couldn't have nailed it any better with tonight's guest, Erin. But I will say this: what she may know about research, she can certainly flip over to when it comes to fishing, because this girl can catch
Oh,
fish.
oh yeah.
And
I'm jealous.
I,
She gets out on the water like so Erin, she is an Ontario Women Anglers volunteer. So I've known her for a number of years. Incredible angler. The fact that she's doing her master's in at the university, it's Carleton University, run by, the program is, she'll have to correct me. I think it's freshwater fisheries or biology or something like that, run by Stephen Cook, or Dr. Stephen Cook. And yeah, just I don't know, just sometimes when she talks about muskie, and she's done a few presentations like for Muskie Canada and etc. Yeah, just a wealth of knowledge, and so glad to have her as part of our team. But I'm really looking forward to what she's going to be talking about tonight.
Well, you know what? Without further ado, why don't we bring Erin in? We're going to have lots of time to share even more of these pictures, but the one and only Erin Wilson.
Hello, that was a really lovely introduction. I'm like, yeah, OWA has been amazing to myself. Absolutely phenomenal organization. So many great friends made. Yeah, can't say enough about OWA. But thank you so much for the introduction.
Your check's in the mail. So yeah, welcome to the show, and thanks very much for agreeing to be our guest. As I usually do with all of our guests, I ask, like, how did you get involved with fishing? Like, was there did you have a mentor? Were there people in your family or whatever that got you involved? And then and then what happened after that?
So I started off fishing, obviously, at a very young age. I was like 4, I think. Like, we'd always fish. We'd always do the Alpine up near Lindsay. So we'd fish there quite often, just off the dock. And then we actually ended up moving our trailer to Rice Lake. So then I grew up fishing Rice Lake a lot from when I was probably around age 7 till probably 15. I did a lot of bass fishing, smallmouth, largemouth, walleye, just with my dad. It was pretty casual. And then I loved science and I loved biology and I knew I loved fishing. So I actually decided at like a very young age, I was 16 when I knew what I wanted to do. And all I needed to do was get there. I needed to go to university for, freshwater biology and try to get into a fisheries job somehow. So yeah, I ended up at Guelph for freshwater and marine biology. And then I was like, I'd like to take fishing a bit further. I'd like to meet some women to get out. I go with my dad, but he's obviously busy, can't take me all the time. So then I joined OWA, and I'd never ice fished before. Like I was only fishing Rice Lake in the summers at my trailer. So I went to the Elbow Lake. That was a really long time ago. And yeah, fell in love ever since, and it just like skyrocketed from there. Opened up many doors to different species. And then I met my partner, Greg Attard. He's huge into fishing. He introduced muskie fishing up on Lac Seul, and I just took it from there. And yeah, really, really enjoyed learning a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was this year's Laker, wasn't it?
That was last year. That was 38 and a half. That was crazy. It was through the ice. So yeah, I don't think I'll catch a bigger one down here. Maybe if I go up to the Arctic, I could break that PB, but that was something. I'll remember that forever.
Belly on it.
Yeah.
So now you're at Carleton, and the program is run by Dr. Stephen Cook.
Yes. So it's fish biology and conservation physiology lab. Yeah, it's like a.
So can you tell us a little bit about your journey, like when you were at Guelph, and then how you've come to this new university and what you're going to be doing with that lab?
Absolutely. So when I was at Guelph for my undergraduate thesis, which is like the kind of course you would need to take to prepare yourself in order to go into a master's, it teaches you how to do like research and your own kind of research and ask those questions. I did it comparing local knowledge, so like anglers about muskie ecology versus science knowledge about muskie ecology. So that was super interesting. One of the interviewees was Dr. Sean Landsman, which he's also at Carleton. He's an instructor, but he's also taking on students kind of as an advisor. So he's actually my main advisor. Steve is like my second reader, you could say. But Sean is a absolute expert in muskie, and he was looking for a student to do a muskie telemetry study up in the Petawawa River. So I messaged him and I was like, hey, but it was a PhD position. I remember that. It was a PhD position. I was like, is there any chance you could do this as a master's position? He's like, yeah, let me figure that out. And he's like, yep, we can do it. Yeah, all you got to do is send in your application and we can do this study. So here I am. I just started in January. So we're going to be doing field work in May. We're going to get our receiver network out, which I'll go into more details about the project now. So what we're going to be doing is essentially tagging muskies and seeing their habitat use within the Petawawa River. So the Petawawa River is a river that flows into the Ottawa River. But what's really interesting about this system is that it has some crazy rapids. Like they're like class 4 and stuff. So like whitewater kayakers love. It's it's like a hot spot for them. But we're trying to find out is if these muskies can get across these rapids or if they act as a barrier. So there could be like segregated populations, or if the muskies actually use the entire stretch, can swim up the rapids. And if we can prove that they can use that entire stretch, that would deter hydro companies coming in and potentially putting in barriers such as dams. So I'm very lucky in the sense that I can see like the bigger picture of why this research matters. So yeah, and why we would put it in place.
So, Erin, I got to ask, Jamie Sebastian would love to know the results of this study, and I'm sure he's probably going to have a hand in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've had meetings with him. He's a guide on the Petawawa River, as I'm assuming many of you know. And he's actually taking care of our volunteer portion for Muskies Canada. So obviously we're going to have a ton of Muskies Canada support, fantastic organization. But yeah, he's taking the lead on that kind of stuff. He's given us tons of great tips, spots to fish. He's even mentioned a fish called like Big Bertha. He catches this like massive muskie every so many years, not every year, every so many years in this one particular spot. So that was super interesting, but he's a great guy.
Yeah.
Super excited to work with him. So,
Incredible.
That's
Well,
great.
just as Jim says, Yvonne, you know, these fish don't get smart if he's able to go up and catch that same fish every year. Jim will be happy to know that.
And if we tag her, we can find out her home range, which is super fun. Yeah, so I'm super excited. Yeah.
And you're there for 4 months, you were mentioning.
Yeah, so we'll be there from May until September, fishing each of like the individual lakes, tagging muskies, alongside with Kaitlin Cunningham. She's the PhD student that will be working alongside too. So lots of great support.
That's awesome. So like you're a multi-species angler. I know that you fish all year round. Can you tell us a little bit about handling muskie? I mean, they look like these, you know, like great big ferocious fish. I got a mouthful of teeth, but they're very, very fragile. And it doesn't take too much to kill them, especially if you're not targeting them and if you don't have the right equipment. You know, by the time you get them to the boat, they're exhausted. So, you know, whether they survive after that ordeal or not, we don't always know. But can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So Dr. Sean Landsman, actually, his master's project was on this topic exactly. So before he did his project, the only like actual literature that was out there was from the 1980s about catch and release muskies. And the literature was saying that like, you know, 50% of these like muskies die. But then we got to keep in mind that back then we didn't have like the technology of reels we do now. We don't have the we didn't have like the education like of how to properly catch and release. So his study actually looked at when you use the proper techniques, like with the big reels, shorter fight times, not handling the fish for more than like 2 minutes, he actually had no mortality, which is crazy. So it just goes to prove that using those tools to your advantage and being prepared and shortening air exposure, like all of those major factors really do play into a fish's survival. You know, always having bolt cutters on deck. I have an extra pair of bolt cutters in case I accidentally drop my original pair of bolt cutters. Having the net ready to go, having someone who's taking the photo ready to go, phone's ready. You take the fish out, quick picture, release. And if you know that fish is stressed, maybe don't take it out of the water, release it right away. And actually this one tip from Sean kind of resonated with me. Like if that fish is upright and it's doing okay, you're probably better off actually letting go of it than holding it, because when a fish is being held, it still stresses it out a little bit. So if that fish is upright and it's breathing, it's kind of swimming, then you can let go. You shouldn't be holding on to fish for longer than absolutely necessary. So
So a lot of times when I see, I've seen pictures on social media and people are holding these fish and they've got these red tail, the tail is red, the fins are red, and people are going, oh my God, awesome fish. And like for the stress that fish has gone through, can you explain that process? Like I know it's a lactic acid, which that builds up because of the stress of being catched. Can you emphasize on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so it's also has to do with like cortisol levels. I'm not like super, like I haven't done too much research about like the actual physiology of catch and release yet, but I definitely should link Sean's paper because he goes into a deep dive and he measured, I believe, all the different like stress stressors in a fish, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'm not like super confident on that
Okay.
yet. But hopefully, I think my second research question, I plan on doing some catch and release research. So I'll have to keep you guys updated. Yeah,
Yes, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, because I know that I've seen fish, and it happens with pike too, and then there's actually bleeding in the fins because from what I understand, there's so much lactic acid built up in the fish
Mhm.
because of them not being, maybe the person doesn't have the right type of equipment and they're fighting it for a long time, and by the time
Yeah,
they get it in, and then they hold it up for a picture, and then
yeah.
there's dripping blood off the tail.
Yeah, that's that's definitely something. I've also noticed that different strains of muskie tend to like exhibit those characteristics a bit
Hmm.
more than others. So like the Great
Okay.
Lakes strain, I find are the ones that usually get those red tips. Like Black Soul muskie doesn't happen quite as often, neither with like Kawartha muskie. Maybe that's just
Okay.
me, just something I've kind of noticed, but yeah.
I have
Hmm.
to say too, one thing that I talked about with Lisa and John and a few others from Muskies Canada. We try to do our best. We don't necessarily want to discourage folks from targeting muskie
Mhm.
Hmm.
during the hard water seasons, but the last thing that I would want, if I knew a muskie angler was offended by one of our edits that was taken with the individual holding the fish in a hut, the thought, if I'm a muskie lover, that got dragged through an 8-inch hole or whatever, we try to remove the background. We still love to see the pictures, and it's not illegal in some areas to target muskie, but
Yeah.
to your point, it's all about image, right? And perception is the reality. And if you're holding a fish on the ice, there's a pretty good chance that came out of a hole that was tight. I don't want to say
Yeah.
small, but tight. So again, when we are handling, and it doesn't matter if it's the dead of summer or the hard winters, um, we have to be careful that we're not laying that fish on the ice. We're not exposing it to elements. And as John White will show us in a video that we're going to be sharing after this segment, um, you know, just even sunlight blinds the fish to a point where they don't necessarily know where they're going. So releasing these things and making sure that they're healthy when they're released is vitally important. And thanks so much for sharing a lot of that
Yeah.
knowledge
Mhm.
with us.
No problem. And just to add to that, one of my potential second research questions is actually the effects of ice angling muskie. Like I kind of mentioned it to Sean. It's not like in the woodworks yet, but it's one we might explore, like post physiology of ice angled muskie. So
Mhm.
definitely a question that a lot of anglers have, and it's not been researched. So I think that would be extremely interesting, especially
Mhm.
because Quebec, they can ice angle for muskie. So yeah,
Mhm. I was gonna say, but like in Ontario, we're not allowed to
yeah,
target them. Is that correct?
yeah,
In like
yeah,
hard water season? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, good. Whew.
Yeah,
I just thought, oh,
it's tough, man. You know what? It's absolutely tough. And we were talking just before we went live, because I had seen on Erin's profile that you worked at Anderson's Lodge, not knowing that necessarily you were a guide or not, but something that I asked because it just that you're here. That of course
Mhm.
the quotas have increased to lax salt, and I was interested in getting your take. And some folks don't even know that the quota has increased up there, and it's tough. It's tough to keep up to all the changes, but it
mhm.
is a requirement of ours that every time we buy a license and we consider ourselves ethical fishermen, we also have to be educated. And knowing the rules and the regs is truly important.
Mhm. Yeah. Is there anything additional about your research that you'd like to share?
No, I think that's about it. If anyone has any questions, though, or you can say anything.
Mhm.
Well, George has a question here. I think he has a question. Latest science on angler impact. Do angler catch and harvest rates differ between open water and ice water in Wisconsin? Fisheries Research, March 2023. Abstract, understanding seasonal differences and species-specific vulnerabilities to recreational angling can be important for informing sustainable fisheries management practices like fishing seasons or season-specific regulations. However, comparisons of angler catch and harvest rates among seasons with this disparate modes of fishing. That is a huge response. Sorry, George, that perhaps there was a question in there. We didn't necessarily get it, but at the end of the day, I do have a question for you. You studied at the University of Guelph.
Mm-hmm.
Was Rick Mokia still there and in charge of the aquaculture department?
No, I don't think so.
I just aged myself, Yvonne. Rick was someone I spoke to at great length. He was in charge of the aquaculture department there, and he was a wealth of knowledge. And the thing that I really liked about Rick is he had no second guessing when it came to sharing knowledge. It wasn't necessarily, well, you know what, dude, if you have all these questions, why don't you enroll in one of my courses? Rick was very forthcoming with a lot of information. So it was really interesting when you said the University of Guelph. I thought I'd give a shout out to Rick. If he's retired and enjoying his retirement, good on you. You worked for it, dude, and you deserved it. But it is a very interesting department. It's not something necessarily well known unless you're in the area of expertise that you are, that they have such a great great department when it comes to fisheries and any kind of aquaculture or that kind of research studies. But needless to say, it is cool for those who are interested in getting involved, and they might be in the Southern Ontario area. You don't have to go far. So Sanford Fleming is huge, Carleton's huge, and the University of Guelph is also. So very cool that you shared that with us.
You have a couple more questions in the chat.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you can answer this one. Is, do fish see color, or do they see color in water? I don't know if you've studied that.
Like I've touched on it before. I believe it really depends on the species and the types of habitats they live in. But I do know that when we have like a color scale, as we go through the depths, you lose color essentially. So like purple, like violet light rays, break through the most, I guess. And then like your shallow would be like yellows, oranges, reds. Your mid depths would be like greens, a little bit of blue, and then like blue and violet penetrate the deepest, essentially. Yeah, that's like red is basically what I know about that.
Yeah, red is the first to disappear.
Yes,
from
it goes
what I
like
understand.
Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, just like the rainbow. So
yeah.
Here's another question, and this is a great question. Outside of muskie, what is your favorite species you like to fish for the most?
Oh no, outside of muskie. That's a tough one. Oh boy.
Master angler crappie at Elbow Lake.
Yeah. Oh no.
So I have to tell you, when we had our summer event at Elbow Lake, which is just north of Kingston, Erin was mentoring some ladies out in the water, and they were catching master angler size crappie, and she got great crappie. She got lots of crappie, but she was just couldn't get that 13-incher. And she was like, damn it, everybody around me was getting them, and I was helping people getting them, but I wanted to get one too.
That's awesome.
It was like half of an inch, quarter of an inch, just it's fine. So I'd say lake trout through the ice is definitely up there. I love fishing for lake trout. They are so fun. Yeah, lake trout for sure.
Is that a drum? What fish is that? Is that a red fish or is that a drum?
That's a red drum.
That's what I thought,
yeah, that was the one. I went to the Outer Banks with like Cooper Gallant and Colin and all of them. That was super fun. And I'm going to be going to the Bassmaster Classics to cheer on Cooper. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, that'd be a great trip.
We have a question here from Daryl. What is your greatest fishing story that you'll never forget?
Oh,
I know we ask nothing but tough questions here on CFN.
I know, right? So I have two, I guess. The lake trout I caught that was 38.5 inches. I fought that thing for like 40 minutes. And when I got it up, I like got it up by myself, and it had like a single hook of the treble, and I was using a vibrato, like right on the tip, like barely hooked, like barely hooked. Like I don't know how I got, like it all worked out, but I was so stressed the entire time. And then I got it up and I was like yelling for Greg, my my partner. And I was like, Greg, Greg, and he's like, what? And he comes and he's like, holy shit. Like, I got a big lake tray. It's like, no shit. Like, yeah. Excuse my language. Oh my goodness. And then, yeah. And then my other one would be on Lac Seul this summer with Greg again. My biggest muskie was the 48, and we were fishing. I had a bucktail way out. I was just bringing it in. Massive wake way out, like 30 feet way out behind my bucktail. And I always like freak out when the muskie follows. Like internally I'm freaking out because you gotta stay calm. So I'm freaking out and I'm like, just stay calm. And I literally first turn just like narfed, and yeah, chaos. Just chaos. It was sick.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love when they eat boat side. Like it's just such a cool phenomenon, and like I think that's what keeps maybe a lot of muskie anglers hooked, is like the thrill, like seeing a fish eat right in front of your face. Like it's crazy.
That's awesome. Well, listen, we've had it again. I don't know where the time goes, Yvonne. I know we have one more question before we go, but I know when it comes to our CFN community, we can't thank the both of you enough for coming here tonight and sharing like the passion for angling. Because again, there's no other way to explain it, but you can tell your passion is no different than the rest of ours when it comes to the excitement that you have hooking a fish, whether you see it or you don't. Feeling that tug is definitely a drug, and I am addicted.
I hear you.
Any last questions, Yvonne?
No, I know you have other guests coming on, and I just want to say thanks again to Erin for being on the show, for sharing, everything that you've been studying about fish and all the practical experience that you put into your field work. I really look forward to seeing some results from your research. Yes. And we'll be seeing you hopefully. I know you got a busy summer ahead, but Erin is going to be possibly helping out at our steelheading event this coming in April. And I just want to say thanks for everything that you do for Ontario women anglers as well.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely want to come back and give a project update once I have some like really cool stuff, and like be able to have that like animation where you see the fish and where they're going. I think that would be super neat. But thank you so much for having me. This has been great. Yeah.
Right on. Well, Erin, thanks again so much for sharing, and we look forward to seeing you in the future and all of the initiatives and activities that you're involved in. Needless to say, it was a lot of fun editing your fish. My chin was on the ground for most of it. Definitely some bucket list fish there that you've caught that I haven't, but needless to say, we look forward and we hope that you have a great open water, freshwater season.
Thank you.
Right on. Well, as always, Yvonne, you hit it out of the park. Erin was yet another fantastic guest, and we thank you so much for doing these segments. Really cool, welcome. For us to be able to get to know our lady anglers, our female anglers, because as you said, I mean, it's great that we have these events like the Spring Fishing and Boat Show, and the Ottawa Show to sort of hook up and share some stories behind the scenes and some laughs, but. Needless to say, I'm taken back by how busy and active your ladies are in our community.
And getting and more. We've just we've got a lot more in the works in the next year or two.
That's awesome. Well, listen, good luck with all your events and everything else that's upcoming. We look forward to your next guest, and whenever that may be. No rush, no pressure. But needless to say, this was a great segue for what we are about to talk about with our group from the Sportfish Research out in Saskatchewan. We look forward to speaking with them. But just up first, Lawrence and Jason Barnucz will be joining me right after this. Take care, Yvonne. Have a great night.
You too. Bye, Scotty.
Peace.
The fear of failure is failure itself. The world of science rewards the ones who are willing to try and fail. Because without the courage to embrace failure, ideas remain ideas. But with that courage to fail and to learn, ideas can change the world.
Well, lads, what a segment that was. Holy
That was great.
I mean, I know I don't even know where to start, because I know you folks have acquaintances that both.
Oh, Scotty froze. Guess it's our show now.
No.
Okay, well, yeah, that's. Oh, there he's back.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
No, 100%. So where you guys lead me? Where do you want to start?
Well, I just want to say that with Erin, like, how should I put this nicely? I totally railroaded the show backstage. If Scotty would have let me on first thing, I just would have kept on rolling with chats about me and my 25-year-old self living in the wilds of Algonquin Park, in my early on in my career, and meeting people like Erin. It inspires me because as you get on in life, I love my job. I love what I do and working with fish and working in the outdoors, but being able to hear someone like Erin tell me about her interests and what she's able to do, and the people that she's working with, who we have a lot of mutual friends, academically, professionally. It was great. I was 25 again, driving some old rusted out Suburban down some logging road in Algonquin Park, listening to her talk. It's fantastic.
Well, Jay and Lawrence, you didn't get to hear a lot of the conversation before we went live, but just to Jay's point, I honestly don't know who was more excited to see her, us or Jay, when it came to the stories that they were sharing. I mean, Yvonne and I basically just sat back and said, "Just let us know when you're done."
Yeah. I came in on the tail end of that.
It was awesome, man. It was just, what? And at the end of the day,
honestly, so Erin, I've never actually talked to Erin other than a couple of highs and hellos, like on the ice or whatever. But we have so many mutual friends, and so, and I knew she was coming on tonight. And as soon as she started talking about her, and I knew she had started working with Steve Cook or his lab. And I knew that it had happened. So once I started to hear about her research project, like that just becomes inspiring. And it's not just because it's muskies. There's a lot of cool research going on out there on the planet, and even in our little corner of the planet in Southern Ontario. And listening to her talk about that, that's just inspiring to me. So tomorrow's going to be a good day at work.
100%. And one thing that is definitely, I would say, an underlining big proponent of a lot of her messages, whether it's her studies or what she tries to promote, is keeping the fish wet. I know, Lawrence, it's something that you talk about. Jay, you also push this as well. But when it comes to muskie, it's really, really important. And the folks that are going to be joining us shortly are probably going to be talking about it as well. But something that I wanted to share with you, and I want to thank John White for putting this video together, which is really cool. I know, Lawrence, you're not going to be able to see it, but we will describe it after the video is done.
What happens
so just take a listen.
To fish you release? Obviously, there's going to be several factors that are going to determine the chance of survival. One thing I've seen many times on bright sunny days is that they become blinded by the light. It helps if they're released from a dark hut, but sometimes this is what happens. They're frantic to get back down to cover, but they actually can't see where they're going. But most of the time they're fine, they dig themselves out of the mud, belly down for a while, and then eventually they'll swim away. Some are almost immediate and others take a while. The only thing we know for sure is that survival rate in the frying pan is very low.
That goes without saying, I would say.
Yeah.
But big shout out to John for putting something like that together. And what he was able to capture, Lawrence, was these perch that were released. And obviously they were snow or sun blind, and they would bury themselves, whether they were upside down or right side up, into the mud. And obviously, as he mentioned and described in the video, they're just feverishly trying to get away, and they'll do whatever it takes to do that, but necessarily not knowing exactly where they're going. So again, begs the question: do we take more time when we're releasing fish?
I don't think you need to take them out of the water necessarily. Like, there's a lot of I just did a podcast with some really top anglers in the States, guides, and that are working with tarpon and bonefish and redfish and all sorts of really prized permit, sort of sport fish. And there's a lot of rules being evolved down in the east that you don't even bring the fish into the boat anymore. Like, you can't bring a tarpon into your boat anymore. That's
interesting.
Totally out. So they're working with this, and they're figuring out how to do this and keep their clients happy. No more holding the fish in the boat with the grip and grin shot anymore. But they're finding other ways of doing it, and the fish are surviving better. So they're learning all about this. As far as those panfish goes, I mean, if you watch panfish on when you're ice fishing, on the sonar, and then they're all below your hole, and then all of a sudden they just disappear. They all hit the bottom, and they hit the bottom, and then if maybe 30 seconds later, a big mark will cruise through, a giant pike will cruise through the area. So these fish, when they're scared, they hit the bottom and hold still and pretend not to be there. That's a defense mechanism for them.
Interesting stuff. Well, listen, some perch were caught this past weekend at the Canarsie CFN Ice Jam.
Nice.
We're going to be bringing them in right after this video that we're sharing. But this is our CFN group that was out on Canarsie Lake. They had a lot of fun fishing. I don't know how much fish they're going to catch. On the Saskatchewan Sportfish Research Group is going to expose how good or bad the anglers were from CFN. But I could tell you by this video that at least one, possibly two fish got tagged. But we're going to be talking to, of course, Chris, Kaitlin, and Julee, who also joined us out there. And as you can see, did and were successful tagging some fish. So let's bring in Chris Summers, Dr. Chris Summers, Julee Stewart, and Kaitlin McCallum. How are we doing tonight?
Excellent. Thank you.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, again, I can't say enough on behalf of our entire CFN community and myself personally. Walter knows how excited I was that you folks were going to be joining our group out there and doing something that I've always wanted to see done. When groups get together, it is a perfect opportunity for a creel sample. And the fact that you folks joined us to do that creel sample and we could help perform it for you, I tell you, it ticks so many boxes, but it warmed the heart. So thanks so much for joining us this past weekend.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us and for hosting. It was a fantastic time.
Now, who caught the most fish?
Well, I can honestly say it was not me. And I think the longer I study fish, the worse I get at catching them. But it was definitely the anglers from the CFN that caught the most fish. So it was great that they were there, or we would have been in big trouble research-wise.
That is funny. Well, and Daryl said it was a tough bite, wasn't the easiest of bites. But needless to say, I'm glad to hear that our CFNers have been listening to these lives and all of our incredible guests that share all their tips, tricks, and techniques to catching fish, especially perch. But was it only perch that were tagged, or were you tagging other species?
We tag a variety of species. This weekend, the target was perch. And so the rumor that I had heard was that the perch fishery in Canarsie was stellar. And so that was the one that we were after. And we, of course, would have tagged walleye as well if some walleye had showed up to play. But it was perch that made the appearance, and so they were the ones that got the attention.
And what was the goal when it came to tagging the perch? What is your focus, and what are you hoping to achieve by having these fish tagged?
Yeah, so I run a much bigger program on fish tagging across a good portion of Saskatchewan, and the idea there is to get a handle on a few basic things. We tag fish in a body of water. How often tag fish get recaptured tells us something about survivorship from catch and release, for one. It tells us something about population size. So if you tag a bunch of fish and they disappear into millions and millions of others of the same kind, you might never see another tagged fish again. It tells us something about growth between the time of tagging and the time of recapture. And particularly for perch, one of the things that's always perplexed me is that when you're ice fishing, sometimes you feel like you're catching the same fish over and over again. I'm sure everybody's had that kind of feeling, right? And is that true? Or is this a cohort thing where you just stumble upon a school of fish that are all carbon copies of one another? And then, of course, there's the unknown factor. Once you get tags on fish in the water, things come up that you didn't plan to study, but they just suddenly appear, like the number of times they get recaptured, some strange movements that they make. Sometimes things that you weren't expecting to study just show up, and you find some pretty cool things.
Very cool. Well, you know what? I will let our panel, Jay and Lawrence, who I'm sure have a bunch of questions for you. I know Jay does, so I'll let you two go first.
Actually, I'd love to hear from Julee and Kat about some of the research you're doing in the Summers Lab.
Yes, for sure. So my research is just in the winter. It is all ice fishing. So what I'm studying is the effects of catch and release of northern pike in southern Saskatchewan. So what we did is we actually asked anglers their opinion on what type of hook they use when they try to target pike in the winter. So we used that through the Saskatchewan Sportfish Research Group Facebook page. And we found that double trebles were the most frequently used. And then we also decided to include in the study single treble quick strike rigs as well as triple. And then just to be a little different, we also decided to use the circle hook just because of its conservation benefits that we think they have. And so we have these 4 different hook types that we use, and we're just trying to see how that affects the fish injury-wise, behavior-wise, everything like that. We have GoPros on the line of the tip-up, so all my research is tip-up fishing. So I get to actually see the behavior of northern pike as they come and interact with the bait presented on different hook types, which is like super interesting to look at after. And you go in thinking they're going to be these like aggressive predators that are just going to come in and like take that bait. But actually we found that they're pretty tentative and they like to take their time and they like to think before they decide to strike. So we're getting all this information. When we catch the fish, we tag them, we weigh them, we measure them, and then we release them and work with the Citizen Science program for recaptures and gain lots of novel information on these fish.
What's your favorite hook so far? Where do you think the most promises? I know like Gord Pizer, he's really promoting the whole circle hook with live bait or dead minnows kind of tip up solution. He says it's really effective for avoiding those deep hook kind of situations.
Yeah, so I would agree with that. The circle hook's definitely a good option just because you can let the fish run with it for a long period of time. And it's not meant to, or it's not intended to stick to any of the internal organs of the fish. And it's meant to just hook the jaw of the fish. So if you're going to let it run for a long period of time, that's definitely a good option. But however, I'm a little more biased and I really like the single treble hook. And we've actually nicknamed the double treble hook the double trouble.
Oh, for sure.
It gives us so much issues. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I went fishing with a neighbor, and he had perfected the art of catching mega pike in this canal system just outside Toronto. And he used a large minnow, a giant float the size of a tennis ball, and minnows that were about 10 to 12 inches long. And what he would do, he would throw it out there. And he said, the first time the bobber goes down, you do nothing. Because what happens is the pike comes and takes it. It T-bones the minnow, and then it swims back to its private lair where it can let go of the minnow and then position the minnow for a head first swallow. So they don't want to do that out in the open where another fish could come and grab it from them. So he said, you'll see your bobber go down, and then 20, 30 feet away, the bobber will pop back up And that's when the pike lets go of the minnow to reposition it for the swallow. And then the second time the bobber goes down, that's right away. That's when he sets the hook, because then he knows the one treble hook, or even he was just using big singles, that he just behind the dorsal fin on these live minnows, the minnow starts to go head first down the throat of the pike, and that's right away he sets the hook then and gets a pretty good hook set right in the upper lip of the pike that way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We definitely see on the GoPro videos that they like to reposition themselves so that they do come at the head of the fish. So that's definitely what we're seeing. So that's cool. The setting, one thing we're doing that's just like a little bit different is we're really trying to put the quick back into quick strike. So we only allow 20 seconds for the fish to interact with the bait. So it's spooling on the tip before we.
So you're noticing sometimes they just swallow headfirst right away off the rig there.
Yeah, sometimes they come in the middle, but most of the time when we have a fish on there, so we use Cisco mainly or smelt, they come through the head. When we use a hot dog, they like to come right in the middle.
T-bone it.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. So that's why the quick strike rig, you really have to be quick strike, because you don't know if it's going to swallow it right away. And then if you're not on top of that, you've got a deep hook situation, right? It's but that's where circle hook pays off, because even if it swallows it, a non-offset circle hook. And are you using non-offset or offset circle hooks?
So we're using inline. There was a little bit of a learning curve associated with the circle hook at the start of our study. We used a hook that was too big, and then we did notice they were slightly offset. So we were unfortunately getting some deep hooks that we didn't really want to have, just because of the catch and release aspect that we're trying to do. So we make sure that all of ours are tournament legal circle hooks, as well as we check each one of them to make sure they're directly in line so that they don't accidentally hook anything.
Yeah, the billfish competitions for sport anglers down in the South America, they're all, and even in the United States, it's all non-offset, 100% non-offset, and you can't bend them in line yourself. You have to buy them non-offset, because even the slightest little bit of offset can result in a deep hook.
Yeah, we have found that too. Just the slightest little, like if that point's just slightly off, it will hook it. Yep.
Huh. No,
So I have to jump in and say, Lawrence, the one of the issues that we faced is that supposedly 0-degree offset hooks by the manufacturer are in fact not 0-degree offset. They are a low.
I guess that's why they sell the tournament, like for the billfish. They actually sell billfish series non-offset hooks that are specially designed and made for that tournament. So that's interesting that you're finding that. A little disturbing.
We actually do have to take a look at them and do a little test with each hook before we put it out on a rig to make sure that it is, it might look to your eye like it's 0-degree offset, but when you drag it over a surface or you place it on a flat surface, you can see there is just a tiny bit of offset, and it's just deviance from manufacturing. Yeah. And so you do have to be quite careful with, I always put quotes around it, the quote unquote 0-degree offset.
Hey, Chris, I just want to say hello, and I have to get you back on the podcast again someday. But were you involved with the Water Rangers and the Ripple Effect video series?
I was not. So the Water Rangers, there is a professor here at the University of Regina. Her name is Carrie Finley. She's involved with Water Rangers. Yeah. But that's out of my purview.
Okay, so the video they made just got selected for a huge film festival, International Water Quality Film Festival. I don't remember the name of it, but that's pretty cool for you guys.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So I have to ask Julie and Kate, when it comes to the studies that you two are involved with, maybe we'll start with Kate. I know you've learned a lot about fish, but what was one of the coolest things that you learned that you didn't know prior to entering into the research group?
Yeah, well, so my project is nothing at all like Julie's. I'm on kind of the very opposite end of the spectrum. I still work with fish, but other than that, our projects share very few similarities. So I'll just take the opportunity to explain what I do. Sure. So I'm looking at the impacts of the phasing out of coal-fired electricity on the aquatic environment. So here in Saskatchewan, we still have a few coal plants that supply the majority of the power for our province. but those are being phased out. And those power plants pump hot water into the reservoirs that they are associated with. So my research is looking at how that aquatic ecosystem will be affected when that hot water is no longer being put into the reservoir. So I work on one particular reservoir in the southeast of Saskatchewan, close to the city of Estevan. And that reservoir in particular, Boundary Reservoir, it's been receiving that hot water for almost 60 years. So the removal of the hot water is going to cause some pretty big changes. So that's what I am looking at. And something that's special about Boundary.
Do people fish there? Do people fish in the winter near the outlet?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Actually, Chris just threw a line in a couple of weeks ago with no success again there.
Oh, crap.
But people do fish at the hot water return area in the winter. But people also do ice angle at the end that freezes as well. So an interesting spot. But yeah, it is a very unique water body for Saskatchewan, being that it doesn't freeze over completely in the winter, but it will in the future when that hot water is no longer. And another unique thing about Boundary is that it's the only largemouth fishery in the province. So that might not mean a whole lot to you Ontario anglers, but it is our only largemouth fishery. And they were stocked in the 80s, and they've persisted ever since, likely due to that warm water. So a big question of ours that arose is what's going to happen to the sport fishery, and in particular those largemouth bass.
Yeah, because they have warm water. They're growing all year round, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting place for sure.
And what was of all the research that you've done, Kate, what was one thing that you didn't know going into it that you've learned while doing it?
I would say just the challenges that come with fisheries fieldwork. It is not an easy field to be in. And so I would say I have learned a lot with that side of things, just going with the flow and letting the weather and the fish dictate what we're up to.
Interesting. I think we hear that a lot from Jay too, when it comes to a lot of the research that he does. Jay,
you make me feel like I'm a big whiner. No,
not at all.
No. Well, this is fascinating about largemouth bass in Saskatchewan. So in Ontario, I study species at risk, fishes mainly, but I do a lot of fish biodiversity research in Ontario. So kind of, the biogeography of fish in Ontario is kind of what's always working in my brain. So hearing about largemouth bass in Saskatchewan is really cool. I actually did a little digging before the show about it, and I saw Pete Bowman was involved in something with Boundary Reservoir. Pete Bowman is one of the co-hosts of the Fish in Canada show, and I'm not sure if he did a shoot there or he was involved in something there, but he's a largemouth junkie, and so there was an article on the Fish in Canada website about Boundary Reservoir and about the largemouth fishing there and how unique it is. So yeah, I had no idea till tonight that there was largemouth bass in Saskatchewan. I kind of figured there wasn't. I know it's in that fringe area, right? There's largemouth bass kind of in Manitoba, and there's largemouth bass in British Columbia. They're causing a lot of problems out there, but there's some giant largemouth. So I'm torn. I'm angler and I'm also a biologist, so I appreciate both sides of that. How big are some of these largemouth getting in that reservoir? What are we talking here? Like trophy size?
Yeah. So it's in an interesting spot. So we only caught really fairly large adults, and then like baby juveniles. We caught very few in the mid-size range, which was very, very interesting and a unique finding that we are going to dive into a bit more. But so on average, the size that we were catching was around 40 centimeters.
And what are you using to catch those fish? What gear are you using in that reservoir?
So bass are notoriously trap shy, meaning that our traditional fisheries techniques don't work very well. So we are mostly using live trapping techniques like fyke nets to catch fish, but they don't go into them very often. So we do a fair bit of scientific angling to catch bass. And
I like how you put scientific in front of angling. I like that. That's very clever. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a bit of a learning curve for us too. Being it's the only largemouth fishery in Saskatchewan, myself and my techs had very little experience largemouth fishing. So, it was a bit of a learning curve, but we did get it a bit more figured out halfway through the season, I'd say. What worked, I would say, consistently the best for us was just a plastic worm on a Texas rig.
Interesting.
And what kind of habitat there is it? I see that on Navionics, it's a pretty deep lake, like relatively speaking. There's a lot of 30 to 40 feet of water. But is there any like shallow water environments? Like largemouth bass are notorious for loving their shallow water habitats. What's the habitat like in that reservoir?
It is very bland. There is very little structure in the reservoir, and that those shallow areas that the bass prefer are few and far between. It drops off very quickly into that deeper water. So the bass are really constrained to this ring around the outside of the lake, and that's about it. So, and there isn't much, like I said, in the way of structure. Very few, natural features. So if there is like a down tree, you can almost guarantee that there will be a bass under it.
Wow, very neat.
And do you have evidence?
I have to jump in for a sec too and just show Jay my shirt.
Huh?
Nice, love it.
Yeah. So I have that same pull that you feel, where I'm usually a very strong proponent of native fish, native biodiversity, but for some reason the bass just pull me in. I cannot resist those little devils. So
I know, I feel I got to keep my head down once in a while, right? I got to keep, that conflict of interest comes up from time to time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Walter asked a great question that I'm sure a lot of other Saskatchewaners may not know, but do largemouth obviously require warmer water, and why are they not found in other areas of Saskatchewan?
Yeah, so they are typically a bit of a warmer water species. In the literature, it says that around 27 Celsius is where they experience their optimal growth. So a lot of lakes in Saskatchewan just don't provide that type of temperature for the bass. There has been efforts to try and stock them elsewhere in the province, and none have been successful. So we do think that the warm water is the reason that this bass population established and has persisted for so long.
So I guess, Kate, the obvious question is, if they were to get rid of the outflow, would the bass also go with it?
So I get asked that a lot, and I lean towards no. I think they will persist. I do think they're going to be stressed, and it's going to perhaps shift to favor the native species more than it is at the moment. But we did find evidence of bass spawning all throughout the reservoir. So even the very far end that isn't really affected by the hot water, they're using that habitat as well. So there's some indicators that these bass may persist. Interesting.
Dr. Chris, I got to ask you, just because it's so obvious to me, and I'm sure Jay and Lawrence as well. I love the mentoring aspect that your group has, and I'm sure you get excited, dealing with the next generation of scientists, anglers, what have you. But what does it mean to you to have someone like Kate, to have someone like Julee on your staff doing this kind of work?
Yeah, so I'm sure if you were to ask them if I wasn't here, they'd probably say I don't actually do anything. So, so to me, graduate students are what makes everything happen. So there's only one of me, but every project that we work on has a grad student that leads that particular aspect. So, for example, Julie's work on winter pike, she lives, breathes, sleeps, and eats that project, right? And she is the one who develops it and takes it where it needs to go in order to be successful. Same with Kaitlin on Boundary. She goes off for 4 months plus to Estevan and runs that field program, just consulting with me every now and then. And to watch the development happen, and to see these folks accomplish things that maybe they thought they couldn't do when they first started. To me, that's the most satisfying part of the job. Now, my favorite part is obviously wrestling critters. So if I can be in a bucket of fish or, whatever, wrestling an animal of some kind. That's where I want to be. But by far, I think the biggest impact that I can have on fisheries in general is to provide this kind of training and mentoring environment where people can go out very broadly in Canada and elsewhere and, make a contribution above and beyond what I can do myself. So that was a very long-winded way of saying that grad students are basically the heart and soul of my program. Without them, there is nothing.
That's awesome to hear. And it's great to have a program like yours. I know we do something similar here in Ontario, but I think the way that you folks present yourself, you're out there and we get to share it. We get to see it, all of the work that you two are doing. And to both Julie and Kate, Daryl Nelson, who was out there, said that you didn't hesitate to teach their daughters how to handle, tag, and collect data this weekend. Daughters haven't stopped talking about it. So thank you very much. So not only, Chris is mentoring you two, but you guys are in fact mentors to the next generation of anglers, and for perhaps maybe folks who want to get involved with this. And Julie and Kate, I know it is an arduous task to do what you're doing, but I have to ask if there was any advice that you could give any young angler, female or male, that want to get involved in something like this. How do they go about doing it?
So sorry, go ahead, Julie.
No, first.
I would just say, and I guess I can maybe just speak a little bit for me and Julie, but neither of us grew up angling. So I would just say, don't limit yourself. If you have an interest in this kind of work, just let your passion kind of shine through and pursue it, because there is opportunities for people who didn't grow up doing this kind of thing. You can make a life and career out of this field, even if, you didn't grow up doing it. So that would just be my advice.
Julie, what would your advice be?
Mine would be very similar to Kat's. So yes, last year was my first time ever handling a fish when I entered my master's program. And what inspired me is I watched seminars. So in your 4th year of university here at the University of Regina, in your undergrad, you have to go to seminars every week. And one of them was on fish. And it was on barotrauma. And I thought it was absolutely so interesting. My interest was completely sparked. And I actually reached out to Chris Summers. And I was like, is there any project that you have that you could tell me about and that I might be interested in? And he came back to me with this whole ice fishing project. I was so interested, had never handled a fish, and was like, this is something I want to do. And he taught me everything about fishing. And I would just say, if something interests you, just go for it.
Amen. I will leave it up to the panel. Jay and Lawrence, you guys follow up with our wrap-up questions.
Hey, I just got to ask, what is Julie and Kate's favorite fish? I have to ask that. Mine's the northern mad tom. That's one of the rarest fish I get to work on in Southern Ontario. It's a little tiny catfish if you want to look it up. But I want to hear, what is your favorite fish species?
Well, my favorite fish is actually, I study it, so I might be a little biased, but I like the northern pike, and I love holding them like a little dog. They're just so fun to hold like that when you're running back to the tent. But also, I really like catching Cisco, because they're so cute and they're not pointy or anything when you're holding them. So when you tag them, they're nice and easy, and they have those cute big eyes.
Cool.
Kate?
And for me, I'm a trout girl. That's how I kind of got into the angling world. I'm a self-taught fly angler, and so I would have to say trout specifically cutthroat. I love the places that they inhabit. So those alpine lakes and beautiful streams so I'd have to say cutthroat trout are my favorite.
Very cool. I've actually caught cutthroat trout in alpine lakes in Waterton National Park in my youth. That was one of my favorite memories out there. Yeah. That's so cool. Nice.
Stunning.
There was a question here from George, and unfortunately, this is going to expose all of our CFNers and how well they did this past weekend. But how many fish were tagged, Dr. Chris?
Well, keep in mind, this is our first effort and our first time on Kenosi. So we actually tagged a grand total of 7 perch.
Woohoo!
We did collect some length and weight data, as well as some scales for aging from quite a few more. So I use a cutoff of 19 centimeters length. And a fish has to be bigger than that in order to receive the T-bar tag. For yellow perch,
Right.
they're smaller than that. The T-bar tag, it's just too big for them to take. And so we did have quite a few fish come in the sort of 14 to 18 and a half centimeter range. So those did not make it into the tagging program, but we did collect data on them for some other aspects. So don't be too hard on the CFN guys. They caught some trophy type perch, but also some that are better just for the lower end of that length at age type analysis.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
Lawrence, have you got a final question before we wrap up?
Yeah, I did a bit of filming up in northern Alberta on Lake Athabasca near Uranium City and the old uranium mines up there. And there was signs, do not enter this bay, do not fish in this bay or swim in this bay, and danger radiation signs. Anyone doing research up there on radiation contamination from these abandoned uranium mines and what it's doing to fish?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we like to think of Lake Athabasca as being in northern Saskatchewan, but it's okay that you said it's in northern Alberta. We're okay.
Well, it's both. It's both, right?
I know.
Yeah. It's huge. It's the 9th largest lake in Canada. It's a giant lake.
So my understanding, there are definitely mine tailings areas there. And there is both a heavy metal as well as potentially radioisotope risk factor associated with those areas. And I have seen some consultant work going on there for sort of some routine measurements, but I haven't seen a lot in the way of actual, what I call more comprehensive scientific research. So that's certainly something that would be interesting to do. And if you know anybody who has, a couple $1 million that wants to fund a Far North program, Lawrence, send them my way with a blank check, and we can do what we need to do.
You've been to Lake Athabasca, I'm sure. I mean, it's just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous up there. There's sand dunes. It's like there's a desert climate at the south shore along that lake. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Yes, and there are actually plant species that exist nowhere else in the world other than in the Athabasca sand dunes. There's endemic plants there. It's quite a place.
Oh wow. Yeah, Lakers Unlimited, right there. That's where you want to go. Lakers Unlimited. I don't know if it's still operating, but it's right there on a cluster of islands just outside the Gunther mine site. Good place to stay.
Lake, which is just to the north, is another trophy lake trout fishery that I've had the pleasure of spending some time on. And to their credit, those two lakes produce some absolutely giant lake trout, and some further research would be awesome. But to that question, Dr. Chris, and of course this will be the final question that we have for tonight, if anybody did want to donate money, because obviously groups like yourself, that you depend so much on donations, government funding, folks that want to find out more about the fisheries, how does anyone give money to a group such as yours?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I had a better answer for it, because all of the research we do is based on grant money. So we apply to provincial, federal agencies, we do partnerships with industry, and we have those funds matched by the federal government. We don't really have a mechanism in place for private donations, and it's something that I haven't really found a good way to deal with at the university level. So there is the option for GoFundMe pages and that sort of thing. And I've asked about that. And of course, the university and the university lawyers are like, well, we don't know what to do with this because it's not money coming directly to the university. It's through a third party. And anyway, I won't bore you with my red tape paperwork type thing. So I think the most promising way that we can use private donations to fund things are through partnerships with, for example, like the Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation, which is our provincial hunting and fishing group. They're a nonprofit charitable organization, and they can receive donations, and then through their legacy fund or through their outdoor fund, we can use that as a source to match contributions from others. So long-winded way of saying that we usually go through an agency that has charitable status and that can oversee and collect donations for research.
Awesome. Well, listen, one last thing that I wanted to add, as well as part of some of the collections and data collections that went on this weekend. Again, thanks to all the CFNers who showed up and did the hard work. For you folks, Dr. Chris, Julie, and of course Kate for helping out. But there was one other thing that we accomplished this past weekend that we will share now. Thanks to Daryl Nelson who updated us. He proposed.
Oh, Scotty froze again.
He's right there, Dr. Chris, Julie, Kate, you are all witnesses.
Phil, you got to repeat that, Scotty. You blanked out there for a second.
You froze at the wrong time again, Scotty.
Oh, it's always the way. But again, for all the collection datas and everything that was done there, and all the CFNers that worked very, very hard, thanks so much for joining us out there on the hard water. But the last thing that I wanted to mention was, of course, you are all witnesses. Daryl did propose to his girlfriend, and she said yes. Congratulations to the new Nelsons.
Congratulations, Daryl. That's awesome.
Way to go, Daryl. You hope to keep her that day, buddy. Good job. Absolutely. Good job.
Well,
thanks you guys for all the great research you're doing, and
Julie,
keep it up, man. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Keep up the great work. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And we look forward to all of your future endeavors and all your initiatives and all of the great research that you're doing. It's hard work that sometimes doesn't go noticed in the public eye as much as it should. So any chance we get to pump your tires, make sure you send us a link of whatever it is that you're doing so that we can do so.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everything you guys do.
Right on. Take care, Julie. Take care, Kate.
Thank you.
Right on.
Thank you.
Well, lads, that wraps up our show. Again, it's great to have you two along. Jim wasn't with us tonight. He knew that this was going to be an action-packed show, and he's been busy with a lot of things getting ready for the Bassmaster Classic and the various shows. So I thank you two for joining us. And, of course, Jay, you give us that perspective that not all of us have the ability to share, especially with a panel like that. You're on their level, and again, can't thank you enough for all you bring.
It's impressive to me, Scotty, how, and I'll speak truthfully, a lot of people that I work with in the academic realm did not grow up fishing like you think they would, and they've come across this line of work very organically on their own. They just want to do it, and they become really good at what they're doing, and some of the best colleagues I work with, some of the best scientists I work with, they don't even fish, but they love fish. They love fish. They love protecting their resources. And that's really all that matters in the end, and we, of course, fishing is great to be participating in, but I think that just hearing about their passion, and they found it in a really roundabout way, but we all just love fish. I think that's tonight's show is a good example of that for sure.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Lawrence, do you have any last comments that you wanted to add before we take off?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting up into the Petawawa area. I'm one of the 50 volunteers that were selected to help out with that project. And we're going to get permits to fish in parts of the rivers where there's normally no fishing allowed. So it's going to be interesting. We're really getting like it really is, Algonquin Park kind of territory, right? It's amazing. So I'm looking forward to getting up there this summer and helping out.
I'm jealous.
I hear you, buddy.
Well, we all live vicariously through all of you, so we appreciate you sharing and taking us along. Well, to Yvonne, to Erin Wilson, who joined us, thanks so much for your time. Again, Jay, Lawrence, I can't thank you guys enough for coming here every Monday. And, of course, the Saskatchewan Sportfish Research Group, Dr. Chris, Julie, and Kate, sharing your time again tonight was also very awesome. And, of course, we can't thank our sponsors enough, nor those who show up every Monday, you, the guests, our CFNers that cherish in this, relish in this, and enjoy this. We do this for you guys. And for that, it puts a smile on all of our faces.
It's all because of you, Scotty. Thanks, buddy.
Try, buddy. All right. We'll see you tomorrow, Attorney Tuesday. Of course, we'll be back next Monday for another CFN Live. And again, Dave, it's your turn, dude. Wow.